Hello again, my name is Mark Arnold, founder and president of On the Mark Strategies, and we're doing a three-part series on improving strategic planning through 3-2-1, or the 3-2-1 of effective strategic planning. The 2 is what we're going to cover today, which is 2 tips to improve your strategic planning process. The first tip is to use a GAPO card. Now, what the heck is a GAPO card? GAPO is a card that you give every single participant during your planning session. And GAPO stands for Good Enough Push On. Good enough push on. I borrowed this technique from a good friend of mine, Rory Rowland. He uses this in all of his planning sessions. It's a great tip because a lot of times what happens is in your planning sessions, sometimes one particular person will go on and on and on about one particular topic. And the reality is that happens. Show up your GAPO card. That means good enough, push on, let's move beyond that. That's tip number 1, use a GAPO card. Tip number 2 is to know the difference between trends and fads. In a planning cycle, you do need to know what is the difference between a trend and a fad, and there are differences. You need to stay up to date on the trends that are out there. For example, back in the early 80s, the fax machine was launched. You know, I've often wondered, who bought the first fax machine? That keeps me up at night. Think about it. If you bought the first fax machine, could you send a fax to someone? No, you were the first one who had one. Could you receive one? No, you were the very first one. You know, that kind of bugs me. But the reality is, as you think about that, eventually fax machines became so predominant that everyone had a fax machine. That technology tipped. So as you're looking at financial products and services today, you need to think about, is the internet a trend or a fad? Is mobile banking a trend or a fad? Account aggregation, trend or fad? What about artificial intelligence? What about voice-activated banking? Are those things trends or are they fads? The reality is you need to know the difference, and that is tip number 2. Know the difference between a trend and a fad. So again, here's a bonus tip I want to give you as well. Remember, strategic planning is a process. It's not a date on a calendar, so think about that as well. But those are 2 tips to keep you motivated as you do your strategic planning process. That's the two tips in the 3-2-1 to improve your strategic planning process. Coming up next is the one gap you've got to close in your planning process.